Hello everyone, this is Julia. Thank you so much for joining me on my craft room adventures. Today I have a fun scene card to share with you using some stamps and dies by Lawn Fawn. First, I started out by die cutting cutting down a panel of 4 1/4 by 8.5 inch out of Bristol smooth cardstock, and now I'm ink blending that with distress inks. I'm using squeezed lemonade, ripe persimmon, picked raspberry, chipped sapphire, and black soot. I also die cut a hill panel using the new Slimline, what are they called? Stitched Hillside Slimline borders? Something like that. Now I'm just blending in the ripe persimmon into the yellow, trying to get a nice transition and also build up the color quite a bit. Just going back and forth, switching my brushes because I use cheap makeup brushes because I like to have a lot of them so that I don't have to clean them in between switching colors. So I have one for yellow and one for orange, also one for pink and dark blue, light blue, stuff like that, because that just makes it easier for me to ink blend backgrounds when I don't have to clean the brush, because I do find I can never really get all the ink out, especially when it's like a major change between colors. So this is just so much easier for me, and they work great. Just blending in the picked raspberry as well. And I do find with Bristol, since the coating is so smooth, sometimes, as you can see the white line, you end up basically just pushing the color away. When I have a massive issue with that, I usually just blend it as best I can, then leave it dry, and then going with a second layer, and that usually fixes that problem. Now going in with the chipped sapphire. And I really love that when you lay the chipped sapphire over the picked raspberry, it creates like a deep purple color, which is really, really pretty. Now I'm going in with some black soot just around the very, very top edges, just to create a little bit more darkness there. And now I'm using the Lawn Fawn liquid pixie dust with a little bit of water, and I'm splattering that all over the background. There you can see the pretty shine. And now it's time to ink blend the hill and also the treetops. I'm using shabby shutters, peeled paint, and forest moss for this. Just putting down a layer of the shabby shutters first. For the treetops, I just used the stitched puffy cloud borders. And I'm just adding a little bit of that. I found that it really works when I have bigger pieces to ink blend on my glass mat. I just add a little bit of removable adhesive, just a tape runner that's removable, but for some reason this part just didn't want to stick, so I grabbed my water media mat, the mini size, and just ink blended on that. As you can see, the rest stayed down perfectly well. The adhesive is super easy to clean up from the glass, and I just use either my fingers or an adhesive eraser to get any remnants of or any little sticky bits off the back of my die cuts. Now going in with the shabby shutters, the peeled paint, I'm sorry. And here I'm also adding in a little bit of crushed olive, just to get a more warm tone green, because my background is very warm tone. especially where the hill and the background meet, because it's all yellow and orange there. Now I'm just smooshing the ink pads onto my work surface, spraying some water, and I'm going to add splatters to the tops of the trees for some added texture. I also die cut the little tree stump from the Meadow backdrop in the landscape version, and I die cut some birch trees with Hello Bluebird dies, and I die cut those out of the wood grain cardstock in white, and I'm just using some walnut stain to ink blend that. And for this, I'm also bringing in some ground espresso just to add a little bit more definition to the edges. And there we go, now it's time to color my images. I stamped all of them out onto Neenah Solo White cardstock. And the stamp sets I'm using are really high five, and here we go, Waddeling. The last one is a Christmas set, and the penguin usually is wearing a Santa hat, but this is the only musician stamp I own by Lawn Fawn, and so I used him. I just used some post-it tape to mask off the top of the stamp while I inked it up, then removed it, stamped it without, and I filled in the rest with a Copic multiliner. Just be sure that you use a alcohol ink friendly pen when you fill this in, or you wait to fill in the rest until you've done your Copic coloring, because otherwise you will smear the pen that you used. I know the hat is a bit wonky, but he will be wearing a party hat, so it's fine. I'm just using some toner grays. I used the T3, T2 and T0 on the penguin, and I'm using the T2 and T0 on the bunny just to keep him a little bit lighter than the penguin. Just adding a little bit more shading with the T2 and then blending that out with T0. Also colored in the nose with a T2. I'm using YR02 for the beak and the feet, and also blending that out with Y00. I'm using T3 for his guitar for some of the parts. And I'm using E55 starting with E55 for the body of the guitar, blending that out with E53, then E51. Going back in with a second layer of the E55, then E53, and then the E51 again. I'm using the same E50 markers for my mouse and my bear. I'm using E55 for the darkest shade on my mouse, then blending that out with E53, and I'm using E53 on the bear as well, but this will be my darkest shade there. I'm not using the E55 on the bear because I want to have some difference between the critters. And I'm blending that out with E51, just pulling the color into the image just a little bit further. And then I'm blending everything together with E50. Also taking a little bit of the E50 onto the tummies of my critters, just so that they have a little bit of color. Just basically like 2 swipes there. And for my fox, I'm using E13 as my darkest shade. If you wanted a deeper shade, you could also add in the E15, but I wanted to keep him pretty light, So E13 it is, and I'm blending that out with the E11. Now I'm going back in for a second layer of the E13. As you can see, I'm leaving, as usual, the lightest areas white until I'm done with my final layer, just so that there is a difference between the lightest shade and the other colors. And I'm using W00 for the face, the tummy, and the tail. Now I'm also adding a little bit of blush on their cheeks, just using some makeup blush like I've been doing for a few months now, and I'm still really liking it. I found it so hard to basically blend the Copics or other markers for that matter so that it would look natural, and also finding just the right shade. And this is just so easy. It looks like a little bit like airbrushed. I just really enjoy this, and it's super quick and easy. Now, I did color a lot of images, so I'm not going to show you all of them. I'm just going to show you the combinations I used. For my yellow, I'm using Y17, Y15, Y13, Y11, and Y00. And yes, that's a lot of colors, but I do find the less experience you have with Copics, the more markers you use, the easier it is to get a good blend. I'm not that practiced with Copics just yet. I still have a lot of learning to do, and for some colors it's just so much easier to get more depth when you use more markers. So for my orange color, I'm using YR02, YR00, and YR000. And to get a nice transition between the YR02 and the YR00, because there is quite a big difference, I'm using the tip-to-tip technique to blend those together. Now I also wanted a more bright orange balloon, or balloons, because of the ripe persimmon in the background. So I'm using R05, R02, and R00, which is an orangey red, but not like crazy bright orange. Also using the tip-to-tip technique here to get a nice transition between all the colors, just blending them back and forth. And then I also wanted a balloon that would go with the picked raspberry, so I'm using RV29, RV25 to blend this one out. And this is quite a hot pink, but not like neon bright. And then going in with RV23 to blend that out, and then using RV21 as my lightest shade. Going back in for a second layer. And then for my darker purple, I'm using V09, V06, just as my darkest shades. I thought I wanted to start with the V06, but I did want them to be like a darkish purple, so the V09 I used. Then blending the V06 out with a V05. Then the V01, and again I will be using the tip-to-tip technique to get a nice transition between those two shades. And usually, as you know, I like to line up my markers on the side, but this was a particularly hot day here in Germany, and I didn't want my markers to dry out, so I just, whenever I was using them, I opened them up, and my lightest shade is the V000. Then I die cut the what is it called? The mini string of lights out of white cardstock twice. Just not the swirly one, but just the slightly curved one. And I'm using a Copic marker, the C09, to color in the tops because I didn't want to have to die cut it twice when I could just color it. Just doing that on both sides, just adding one layer of color so that the white wouldn't be showing, because I needed the bottom part to stay white so that it would give me a nice highlight when I added the tops. And I also die cut all of the tops for those out of some champagne gold glitter cardstock. I know this is basically Christmas dye, but I thought you can also use a string of lights for a party, right? Up top you can see the string of lights as the add-on for the Build-A-House. You will be seeing it on the side. I did make this, but it didn't end up looking right or fitting well on the card, so I decided not to use it. I will be using it on a different project though. There we go, there you can see the beautiful sparkle from the gold glitter cardstock. And now I'm using a sentiment from the Elfie Selfie stamp set, just stamping that in VersaFine Onyx Black ink. Using my Tim Holtz platform because I only own the Mini Misty and that is too small for the long panels. And my sentiment reads, "Have an unforgettable day." I added some foam tape to the back of my hill panel and added that to the back. Now I'm trying to decide what trees go where, just using liquid glue, placing them down, and also adding the treetops. I just used liquid glue here because I wanted them to be in the back, so with not that much dimension. And I also left them pretty far out to the edges because I didn't want to cover up all that ink blending that I did on the background. I did lift up the tops a little bit so I could tuck under the ends of the light strings. And this is the only place where I attached them. I didn't want to glue them to the background because I quite like that they stick up a little bit and give it a little bit of more movement and dimension. And up right you can see the Build-A-House that I made, but I didn't end up having enough room, so you will probably be seeing that on another card. Here you can see the pretty sparkle, and now it's time to add my images. Just figuring out the placement, I knew I wanted the tree stump to be in the center because that's the stage where our musician will go. And I added the little party hat to him, and then some foam squares on the back, and then added him to the center. And I know that typically, you know, penguins don't hang out in like hot summer meadows, but you know, he's the hottest new import from the North Pole, and they wanted him for a birthday party, so he came around. I really found it funny that it's basically a penguin there, but you know, he had a guitar, so I had to use him. Now I'm also using the little music note speech bubble from the Here We Go Waddeling. Also using VersaFine Onyx Black ink. Since I never used that stamp before, I stamped it off to the side just to make sure because I was kind of afraid to ruin my background at this point. But to make, you know, give the impression that it's a concert, I did want to add a few little music notes. The other two types of music notes are also from the Here We Go Waddeling. And I'm just stamping them down, kind of holding my breath as to not ruin my background, and it worked out fine, luckily. Now it's time to add the rest of my images. First, I'm gluing together the little clusters of balloons so that they would be easier to add. I didn't die cut the balloon strings because you won't be seeing much of them. I'm just going to use a Copic multiliner and just drawing them in. Just moving them around until I like their placement. And And now I'm just using some foam squares. I added some foam squares on the back, and I'm just adding them right there to the right and the left. And then I tried to figure out the placement for my fox and my bear so I could draw in the balloon strings. The bear is also getting a little party hat. Here I'm just drawing in the strings. Then I realized you can't just draw the front two because there are 3 balloons. So I added in a 3rd stripe. Also adding foam squares to the back of those critters and placing them down, making sure they line up with the balloon strings. I added my little jumping up mouse and also the party hat that's just falling off because he's just jumping around to the music. And the little bunny is just rolling in the grass because he's having such a good time. I just love to tell like little stories with my cards, and I know I'm aware that this is a little crazy, but I'm having fun with it, so why not? Now I'm just adding lots of Nouveau Aqua Shimmer Pen in glitter gloss to the party hats and the balloons. And that finishes off my card. Here you can see... No? Oh. That's that part I usually cut out, but I left in this time because I wanted to mention it. I'm not the neatest colorer, so I usually go over the lines quite a bit. And I'm just using a jelly roll pen in white to go over any of the boo-boos I made along my images, just to have a nice and clean look there. There you can see the pretty sparkle from the cardstock, the glitter cardstock, and also the pixie dust, and the sparkle pen I added to the balloons. I really had a lot of fun making this, and it's just a fun card with like a little concert for my critters. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this one and that you'll join me next time for another crafty video. On screen I will link to 2 more videos that may interest you. Take care and have a wonderful day. Bye!